Welcome back to Routine Rundown. Today I'm here with Cara Sabin, who is a bigwig in the beauty industry. She is the CEO of Shea Moisture. She oversees beauty and well-being at Unilever, the parent company of a lot of our favorite drugstore brands. And we are going to dive in on all the things because it's really amazing to be talking to someone who is involved in such big companies and such beloved companies, accessible companies, and are really changing the conversation. So, Cara, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Zoe. I'm so excited.
We are so excited to have you. You know, we talk to so many different founders and people kind of all across the industry, ranging from big brands to small brands, but we've never had someone who's really works somewhere at Unilever that's really leading the conversation across the board. So I'm really excited about this. I'm excited to hear about your work with Shea Moisture. There's so much to talk about.
Yes, let's get into it.
So I guess first and foremost, as I said, you've got a big job. Can you tell
Mhm.
our listeners a little bit about what you do?
Sure. I'll focus on Shea Moisture, which is I wear two hats, but being the CEO of Shea Moisture is such a privilege and a really unique opportunity, and quite different from the rest of my experience within the industry. But as you mentioned, Unilever partnered with Sundial Brands, the founder of Sundial Brands, Richelieu Dennis, in 2017 and formed a partnership where Sundial Brands and Shea Moisture came into the fold with Unilever, but also as part of that transaction, we were one of the initial investors into a fund called the New Voices Fund. And that fund has invested in many Black-owned and women-owned businesses. And so just even the unique nature of how Sundial and Shea Moisture came into the Unilever family is just really unique. But in my role, when I first joined, I was brought on to be the CEO. But what that really means is being the steward of a family legacy, being the steward of a brand that the community really helped build from the bottom up. And it's a great responsibility and a great challenge, but also an incredible privilege for my team and I. And so, in what that looks like on a day to day basis, it's every day is different. So some days we may be focused on strategy and having conversations long term about how we can not only grow the business, but grow our impact that we make within the community. Sometimes we're focused on product, and so those days are really fun where we're evaluating formulas and packaging and fragrance. Work really closely with our retail partners and helping them with insights and helping them grow their categories. And then I spend a great deal of my time meeting with external partners and talent and creative and content um, producers. And so it's an exciting job. It's very fast paced. The space that we're in is incredibly competitive, but it's also just really rewarding.
Clearly, you've got a lot going on. I think it is so interesting to hear, particularly about a brand, that started before, that has been through many different iterations, but that impact has really, I
Hmm.
think, been built into Shea Moisture for a long time, right? It seems like now
Yeah.
launching a brand, you really can't launch a successful beauty brand without thinking about the impact that it's going to have. But that wasn't the case when Shea launched, correct?
Well, the founder always had that vision that the North Star was really about uplifting our community and doing so through the support of entrepreneurship. And I think the passion had always been there from the beginning because Richelieu was a founder and a serial entrepreneur himself. And so he understood the challenges that entrepreneurs face. And and so that is really baked into our DNA. And in the way that, we often say we're a mission with a business, not a business with a mission.
Hmm.
So the North Star really is the impact that we wish to make, and the products that we sell and develop and create are the way that we're able to further that work. And we do make amazing, incredible products, but the benefit is that we also are focused on replenishing and putting back into our communities and not just extracting value out.
Mm. Yeah, and I have a lot I want to talk about all of those things. But before I get ahead of myself, how did you wind up working in beauty? What is your personal relationship to beauty? What is your approach to beauty, and how has it wound up being a part of your career path?
Yeah, I hadn't, started my career thinking I would land in beauty, but once I did, over 20 years ago, I never looked back. Beauty is just so dynamic, and, I like that it combines the creative and the scientific, the strategic and the executional, but it's also understanding human nature and what drives human beings and their desires and their wants and their needs. Once I entered with my first position at L'Oreal, I just knew that this is where I wanted to be. But to answer your question directly, in terms of my personal approach to beauty, it's very similar to how I think about managing our businesses, to be honest. So, for me personally, as a consumer, my approach to beauty is that I try to be authentic and true to who I am and not, be someone who I'm not. And that's also how I think about our brands. Shea Moisture is a humble brand. We're a brand that we there's a lot that we do, but we don't always tell everyone the impact that we're making, and so we're trying to rebalance that. And last fall, we issued our first impact report, and your listeners can go to sheamoisture.com/impact and see the full impact report. But it was really important to us to document what we're doing so our consumers understand that we take investments from each and every purchase of Shea Moisture. We take those proceeds and reinvest them into programs that support entrepreneurship. And again, the North Star is really how do we play our part in closing the racial wealth gap, which is at $11 trillion. And so we alone can't do it. But we think it's important for us to be a leader in the industry and stay true to who we are in an authentic way.
Yeah. And I think let's dive into this a little bit because I think there's a lot to talk about as far as the racial wealth gap, particularly in the beauty industry, where there
Mm-hmm.
are I mean, I think there's starting to be more black founded brands getting onto shelves, and really it's starting to feel more
Mm-hmm.
inclusive. But I think that is a fairly new phenomenon, which I think we're also going to talk about. But so, what are some
Yeah.
of the obstacles that founders of color, particularly Black female founders, have faced when trying to break into the beauty business?
Well, I think the challenge with raising capital is the first obstacle, and one of the greatest obstacles. We know that less than 1% of venture capital funds go to Black founders, and so they often have to bootstrap and aren't able to scale up as quickly as their counterparts because of the lack of capital. Um, but in terms of running founding a business, and particularly in the early stages, um, I see challenges with founders in terms of scaling up their production to meet demand if they get new distribution, or managing their cash flow, or being able to hire the key team leaders that they need, whether it be legal or sales or marketing, to help them grow their business. And so, because we see that impact up close and personal, we have a network of about 250 founders that we have partnered with and supported and worked with over the years. And I'm really excited that the culmination of a lot of that work came to bear last week, actually, with the launch of our first docu-series, which is available to view on Roku, called Next Black Millionaires. And what we really wanted to do with that is there are three founders that manage three different businesses, and we wanted to show the journey. I think sometimes on social media, being a founder and being an entrepreneur can seem easy, and you just put up a social media page and all of a sudden you're in business, but obviously that's not how it's done. And so we wanted to show the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the behind the scenes. And so two of our founders, for example, are women: Dorian Morris from Undefined Beauty and Latoya Stirrup from Cosmology. And so knowing the challenges that Black female founders have, it was really important for us to have both of them represented in this program. And so what we've been able to do with this is not only tell their stories, but work with them to get them greater distribution in retail, help them. We invested $100,000 into each of their businesses. And so that's an example of a way that we try to reinvest in founders.
I love both of those brands. That's so exciting. I can't wait to watch the
Yeah,
documentary.
yeah.
And I think it's so interesting you bring up kind of the founder story because, like when I was graduating from college, it was around the time when it was like founder mania, like girl boss mania, like making it look easy, all of that stuff. And I think, there's a lot more to it, right? That people don't necessarily see
Hmm.
when it comes to starting a business.
Hmm.
And so with these smaller brands that you're working with, does mentorship come in at all? Like how does that kind of operate as you're working with them? I
Oh,
imagine there's a lot of
absolutely.
knowledge to share on your end.
Well, hopefully, but honestly, we learn as well in the process. But absolutely, the way that we support is not just with capital and grants, but through mentorship, through education, through exposing founders and connecting them to partners that will help them along their journey. Yeah, it's definitely more than just the money, and we find that um, you have to have a well-rounded approach to support founders.
And so much of your work, I feel like throughout your career, as I've been deep diving on you the past few weeks, has been about making beauty feel more inclusive. And this seems like such an amazing
Hmm.
example of that. But are there any other things that you've done or any things that you've been a part of that you feel really proud of and kind of pushing beauty into a better place?
I am really proud of the Next Black Millionaires program, and that's obviously the most recent. But you're right. In the decades that I've been in the industry, and other women of color who are my friends and colleagues and former colleagues, those of us that have been trying to impact change from within. To be perfectly honest with you, until a couple of years ago, it was an uphill battle. And, I think with the racial reckoning in 2020, it accelerated the awareness that was needed of the need to make beauty more inclusive. We have research that says that 80% of people of color to this day, of Black consumers specifically, believe that beauty and grooming products are designed for someone else. And so we have a long way to go to make the industry truly inclusive. But what I'm also excited about, and I'll speak about one of our other brands, Dove, is trying to impact the industry through other avenues. And so with Dove and with the Crown Coalition, they have come together with a collective of like-minded entities and work together to pass the Crown Act, which is legislation that calls for the end of race-based hair discrimination. And so, whether it be textured hair in its natural state, or in protective styles like braids or locks or twists, and so it is now illegal in 23 states to discriminate against someone in terms of race-based hair. And so things like that are ways that we are trying to make the industry, not just the beauty industry, but society, more inclusive and more fair and more equitable. And so doing more things like that are what we're really excited about.
Yeah, and I think for people, I think the Crown Act is such an amazing example to bring up because I think a lot of people may not realize that hair based discrimination is still legal in, what is it, 27 states, right? But it's
Hmm.
real actionable change that's being made, which is so exciting to see. Um, and so you brought up also the fact that many women feel like products aren't made for them. Many women of color feel like products on the shelves are not made for them. But Shea Moisture
Hmm.
really does feel like it's for everyone, but it is for women with natural hair primarily. And I think,
Hmm.
I have so many
Hmm.
friends who use it and love it. How is that something
Hmm.
that the brand has maintained so true to its core when being such a beloved brand all around as well? Like I feel like I love Shea
Yeah.
Moisture, but I also
Hmm.
recognize that it's a product that's made that I'm not the primary client for it, let's say. Like it's for everybody, but also like it puts some brands
Yeah.
first, which I really love.
Yeah, no, I love that question, and you're spot on. When I took over at the end of 2019, one of the things that the team and I did is we really wanted to sharpen our focus in terms of who we are as a brand and what we stand for and who we are for. And we made a real definitive decision that we wanted to center the Black consumer. And through a lot of the purpose work that we do, we had always focused on the positive impact that we wanted to make within the Black community. But in terms of our consumer target, it was a bit more broad, and I felt that it was important to be more sharp because it is the Black consumer who made Shea Moisture what it is. And through a lot of those strategic conversations, we acknowledge that in that sharpening of that focus, we may lose some people, but we also may gain people like you who are like-minded in terms of the work that we do and that you believe in that. And so we've been fortunate that we've been able to stay true to who we are, and that we are designed and center the Black consumer, but we love everyone to use and try our products, and it hasn't been a conflict or an either or situation for us.
Yeah, and I think, that is something that I speak to so many founders of small brands, like Black founders, for example, who people think the products, like white women think they can't use the products. And it is a hard thing, I think, as a brand to communicate, like, I don't know, inclusivity across the board, but also maybe not putting people who look like me in the center of the conversation, which
Yeah,
for
yeah,
so long was the case. And
yeah.
on that, kind of in that realm, it's been 3 years since, as you mentioned, the racial reckoning. I think that was a time, obviously, when the beauty industry really picked up on the fact that things really needed to change.
Hmm.
Where do you think we are now? Do you think that there has been, I mean, aside from the work that I know you're doing and Unilever is doing, do you think the industry as a whole has made strides, and what else needs to happen, and how do we continue to push forward?
Yeah, I think there definitely has been change. I think conversations around race and identity are happening much more openly and without any stigma. Before 2020, I don't recall openly having those kinds of conversations as it relates to the business or in general as it relates to society. So I think, those kinds of conversations are happening. And also a true acknowledgement that um, we have to have diversity of thought and diversity of teams to be able to reflect the consumer and the people that buy and use beauty products. And so, I think that those are ways that progress has been made. But in other ways, it still is an uphill battle in terms of the lack of capital that we spoke about. So I think we're making progress in some areas, and I think we have a ways to go to really really correct the systemic change that is the underlining issue of why we are where we are.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I feel like I will read things and feel like we've come so far forward, and then I will see a foundation range launch with 8 shades and feel like we're not quite there.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think, as I look back on my career, particularly in the early stages of my career, there were many times that I managed brands or portfolios where we were marketing products and I couldn't wear any of the shades, or hair products where they weren't designed for my hair. So even as someone inside of the industry, um, I've seen up close and personal the challenge and some of the blind spots. But I think now that there is this awareness, people like me and other leaders in my organization and just across the industry are using this as an opportunity to make sure that we never go back to that myopic kind of thinking.
Yeah, and that I think takes it so full circle to the fact that it is so important to have people at the table who are making the decisions and
Yes,
who are representing all of the people who are buying the products.
absolutely.
Another big shift in beauty that I have been watching very closely for the last couple of years is this kind of this like merging of beauty and wellness, right? And I think
Mm,
that's something I'm sure you see and look at every day in your work in beauty and well-being. But I'm curious why and how these two things have sort of like I feel like beauty and wellness have always been related to some extent, but they
hmm
typically were limited to spa treatments and massages and kind of those really
hmm
upscale luxury things. And it feels different
hmm
now. I think you can have wellness in a drugstore product in your own bathroom.
hmm
How do you think that's happened? How did beauty and wellness become even more intertwined? And how do you embrace that connection in your own routine?
Oh, that's a great question. I think honestly, the pandemic accelerated the merging of beauty and wellness and beauty and well-being because so many people were struggling and challenged during the pandemic and worried about their health, their mental health. So I think that was really a catalyst to accelerate that. But I think for years we've known that there's a connection between your mind, your body, and your spirit, but it wasn't necessarily a mainstream embraced belief. And I think now, either through research or from people's own experiences, they we understand what that connection is. And so, um, I think the pandemic, we if there's anything positive that could possibly have come out of that experience, I think it is a greater awareness of wellness and well-being. But in terms of my own personal thoughts, I was in a leadership training, maybe it was about a year and a half ago, and it was the first time I personally had heard of somatic therapy as an example. And somatics meaning, movement and feeling. And, the way it was described to me is, someone may go to a therapist, and that is working on your cognitive thinking and how you think, but it doesn't necessarily deal with your feelings and your energy and what you store in your physical body. And so through movement and through dance, and there's different techniques, things like that would have never been discussed in a corporate setting. It would have, been considered kind of kooky. But now, you're seeing more of that come into the mainstream world. And so things like that, like breath work or doing box breathing and things like that, those are ways that I try to, recenter myself and re-energize myself. And I find those to be really effective.
There was definitely some breath work involved the last time I was with the Unilever team. I feel like it was like a meditation, breath work, and I feel like I see certainly a lot of that too as a beauty editor. I feel like those types of practices
Yeah.
have really become kind of what we're doing to be introduced to brands, which is cool. It definitely was not like that 5 or even 3 years
No,
ago.
totally.
And in the realm of your routine, this is routine rundown. What does your daily routine look like as far as beauty
Oh
goes?
gosh. Do you want to know like real details?
Yeah, let's dive in. People love the products.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm not a morning person, and so it takes me a while to kind of warm up. So I generally wake up early, like maybe around 5:30, and the first thing that I do is start my day with a cup of hot water with a little lemon. And I maybe about 2 years ago switched from coffee that I used to drink religiously to matcha tea, and so I feel like that's a little healthier. And so my beauty routine really starts with what I'm putting inside of my body and how that makes me feel. But in terms of products, if you were to look inside of our bathroom, it's like every product known to person is in there. But I really love Tatcha, and there's some amazing products, the facial cleansers and moisturizers. And so usually my morning will start with some kind of Tatcha product. A friend and a former colleague, Ron Robinson, I don't know if you've met Ron, he started Beauty Stat. And so his eye cream is just magical. It's a great base for concealer and helps brighten your eyes. And so I use his vitamin C eye cream. I'm still very true to Clinique, and I use clarifying lotion number 2. And I've probably been using that since I was a teenager, the first time I started using Clinique. And then there's a brand called Mele that Unilever launched that has a really cool biface product that I use. And so, I layer everything up, moisturizers and toners and all of that, and then move into my makeup. And so, NARS has great concealers. I like some of the color correctors from NARS as well. Pat McGrath, I love her liquid eyeliner. It's one of the best. I also like her mascara. And then lip is like a whole nother category. I've got different kinds of lip balms. I love Ami Cole's lip oil. I love Melissa Butler's liquid lip from the Lip Bar. And so, that's just the morning, and then I repeat it at night, and probably add some Vaseline for slugging. And so it's definitely a whole process.
So many great products. I love the Melee SPF oil. Is that still around? Okay,
Yes,
it's
it
so
is.
good.
It is.
I'm like I
It
haven't bought
is
a new
such
one
a
in a
great
year.
product.
I probably shouldn't re-up
Yeah.
because it's maybe expired, but I love it. And the Beauty Stat Vitamin C Serum. Some of my
Yeah.
favorites in there.
Yeah.
And my last question for you, Cara. I think, working in beauty, I feel like I constantly have to fight against the idea and the stereotype that beauty is frivolous. And I think so much of what we've
Mm.
talked about today proves that it's not. What would you say to the people who think that beauty is frivolous, and how do you feel like your work has really fought against that?
Yeah, I've definitely heard that beauty is frivolous, and I can understand on one hand how some people may think that, but I think many others know the true power of beauty. And I think, just as an example, when my grandmother passed away a couple of years ago, I, was inconsolable. It was really a difficult time for me, and I had taken some time off from work for bereavement, but I also at the same time desperately needed a haircut. And so my stylist at the time, I had messaged her, and I said, "Look, I'm not really going out, but my grandmother passed away, and do you think you can fit me in?" And so she opened up her shop on Monday. She was typically closed on Mondays, and the love and the care that she gave to me was so deeply meaningful that it felt transformational. And I think you're shaking your head like any woman, that relationship with your stylist, and how important that is. And so that transformation of her just washing and conditioning my hair and trimming it, and how that made me feel when I walked in compared to when I walked out. I know that there is power in beauty. And then, like we were speaking earlier with some of our brands, and how they are literally changing lives and changing society. I certainly don't see beauty as frivolous.
Amazing. Well, Cara, thank you so, so much. I hope that our readers took lots and lots from this conversation, because I certainly did. Our readers, listeners took lots and lots from this conversation. Thank you so much. Thank you for your work you do in beauty. Thank you for coming on. We appreciate you.
Oh, thank you, Zoe. Thank you so much. It was really a pleasure.
On today's show, you heard me, your host, Zoe Weiner, in conversation with Cara Sabin. On the next episode of Routine Rundown, If somebody really destroyed their nails and now want to grow their natural nails back to health, what are the best types of manicures in that situation to get? Like when you're rehabbing your nails and you don't want to leave them totally naked.
One thing that I love for rehabbing your nails is just press-ons. So press-ons now are everywhere, as I'm sure that you have seen online, in store, on Etsy, on independent sellers, big sellers. They're all being sold everywhere. So press-ons, you can use the nail adhesive because the nail glue that's inside the package is designed to be used on the natural nail. So you can use those, pop those on, leave those on for a week or so. And if you want to take them off, you just soak in acetone. You don't have to do anything special. And it allows the natural nail underneath to grow and also gives a protection on top. And of course, you have the length and or the design that you want as well. So you're not walking around with little nubbies.
Routine Rundown is a Well+Good Studios production. If you like what you heard, please share with your friends so they can follow along. Check out the other podcasts in our network. And if you feel so moved, you can always drop us a line at podcasts@wellandgood.com. We also have a newsletter for you to subscribe to, which we linked to in the show notes for extra insight on all things mentioned in today's episode. Routine Rundown is produced by Taylor Camille, Jen Snyder, and me, Zoe Weiner. Our episodes are edited by Jihan Neighbor with additional production support from Melanie McGregor. Our theme music was created by Nick Doss, and our show art was designed by Natalie Carroll, Jenna Gibson, and Alyssa Gray.